Welcome to Republican Roundtable. I'm Max Reimer, your host. Today we are talking to a local candidate who is running in the South Metro. We are bringing on quite a few local candidates, just get a fresh local perspective on Republican and conservative politics in the Twin Cities. Today with us we have Jim Kiner, who is running in 51A, which is a handful of precincts in Burnsville and a handful of precincts in Eagan. Am I missing anything else?
Nope, that's where it is right there. It's kind of 35E to the river in Burnsville and Eagan, that kind of curved swath.
Ah, yes, that curved swath. Jim, why are you doing this? Why are you running for State House?
Sure. Well, I am pretty sick and tired of turning on the news nowadays, and it seems like every single time there are a bunch of politicians throwing mud at each other about some problem that's out there instead of just getting down and solving the problems, whether you're talking about $100 million they spend on this broken computer system down at the DMV, and there's just no end in sight for it nowadays. Right. All anyone wants to do is write fundraising emails instead of actually getting the DMV working again.
Now, for the people watching at home, who are you? What is your background? And you made mention of why you're jumping into politics, but prior to being a politician, who is Jim Kiner?
Sure. I grew up in Woodbury, Minnesota here. I graduated from Stillwater Area High School. Went on to Carleton College, where I got a double major in economics and political science. I've always kind of had the political bug, just a little bit as a hobby. Went on from there to the U of M Law School, graduated, and was looking for some place to live, and the South Metro started calling to me. And I've lived in Burnsville for the past 4.5, 5 years, ever since I graduated there. So.
As you're campaigning right now, it sounds like you're talking to a lot of people at the doors, you're really interacting with voters this early in the race, which is obviously important. What are some of the key things that you're hearing at the door talking to voters?
Yeah, I've talked with, hundreds and hundreds of people. I've knocked on almost 5,000 doors at this point. I'm just working my tail off here because there's no better way to get to know people and what's important in the district than actually being in front of them, talking to them. So as I've been doing that, I think pretty much everyone from about 25 to about 63 is talking a lot about healthcare, and their premiums and deductibles just seem to always go up and never come down, and it is putting such a stress on family budgets in the district.
Wow.
I was talking to one guy the other day who said his premiums were $1,400 per month. And I'm just thinking about that, saying, that's more than my rent. That's crazy. That's more than housing as an expense for a lot of people. And we've just got to do something to make healthcare more affordable for Minnesotans here, because when you've got people doing that, I talked to another guy who was an independent contractor, and he would watch how much work he would do so that he would still qualify for the subsidies and, do a little less business development work, so a fewer contracts would come in and he'd stay eligible for it, because the moment he gets off of those subsidies, it's that same $1,400 a month for him, except he doesn't have the cash to pay that. So he would have to pull it out of his retirement account and pay taxes on it. So it's like $20,000 a year that he would be out if he worked just a little harder and was supposed to be earning a little bit more for that.
And that is so antithetical to what work is supposed to be, especially as a contractor or as a business owner. I can't imagine saying I don't want to make more money because I want to qualify for this, that, or the other thing. It seems crazy world,
Yeah, work should be rewarding spiritually, and it should also be something that you can strive for, and every hour that you work should be more financial benefit to you. And right now, it's just our system is so screwy that it's not that way all the time. And
a lot of those issues originate obviously in St. Paul, which is where you'll be going after you win the election, but in many cases they are federal issues, or they originate in Congress, or they originate with previous administrations even. I'm curious, Jim, how are you talking to people at the door and trying to balance this? What is a federal issue versus what is a state issue? Do you find yourself having to educate people pretty often?
Yeah, because I mean, a lot of people just kind of know that it's not working
Yeah,
and that
right.
it costs too much.
And it's frustrating.
And it didn't used to cost this much, so why does it now? And it's tough because under the federal rules, you know, if you want to change your state health insurance laws, you need to get a waiver from the federal government. And those are only granted if you meet certain qualifications. So it's not like the state legislature can just come in and upend the whole system and fix it all, because we've got that federal law standing in the way.
Right.
And that makes it difficult because a lot of people just say, well, you should do this or you should do that. And they have ideas that could help lower costs, but ultimately, unless the federal law changes, they're probably not going to survive a court challenge. And that just makes it difficult because someone's asking you for a solution, and it's never a good situation to be in to say, we can't do that.
And they know it's government.
Yep.
It's just there's so much government that you don't really know how to navigate that whole landscape. From a state issue standpoint, you're jumping in for a state house race. As I made mention before, should you win, you will be representing your district in St. Paul. What are some state issues, Jim, that you're either hearing about or you're passionate about or you want to tackle should you be elected?
Sure. We've got just an outrageous tax and regulatory environment in this state. I mean, we've got, depending on who's telling you, about the fourth highest taxes in the nation. Some people will say it's a little better, a little worse than that. But, you know, we've also got a bunch of regulatory burdens we put on our businesses here, and it just holds our economy back, and it's been holding wages back for our workers here. And there's a lot more we could do to be a business-friendly environment in this state. And I think a lot of people are looking to have some solutions and some relief there, both on the personal income tax side, where our lowest rate is higher than a lot of states' highest tax rates.
Right.
And that's just not the way to do things, because you've got a bunch of working class people who are struggling to make ends meet, and then we've got high taxes on them. And we should be making lives easier for people in that income bracket, not harder.
Your seat is an interesting one. 51A has got this history of kind of being a leaning blue district, but not hard blue by any stretch of the imagination. I'm curious, Jim, what are you doing differently than people in the recent past have done to try to win this seat? How are you effectively messaging? What are you doing that makes your candidacy different than any other Republican?
Well, one of the things I did was I got started early in this. I announced in January and have been meeting with people, meeting with the activists, building the connections, getting volunteers ready so that we can be hitting doors, and have been hitting doors just like crazy to talk to as many people as possible. Because, you know, in my district, there's a lot of people who are ready to vote for the right Republican. They just haven't really had the opportunity, maybe, or for some reason or another, the national environment just hasn't favored us quite enough to get there. But I think that this time, you know, I've worked my tail off. I am working my tail off, and I'm going to continue doing that, because there's just no substitute for a candidate who gets in front of people, talks to them, delivers the message, and convinces people, you know, on a one-to-one basis, you can trust me. I'm going to do what's right by our district. And I'm the guy for representing here.
Now, you brought up the federal climate, so it's just something I want to cover, understanding that in suburban Twin Cities, Minnesota, there is a certain type of person in general that lives in these places. And we live in an era right now where when we have that R next to our name, there is an association with the top of the ticket or Donald Trump or rhetoric that we don't have any control over. How are you combating that at the door, or what are you doing to not necessarily disavow anything, but to still say, I'm an independent guy? Is that something, one, you find at the door, and then two, how do you deal with that?
Oh, I absolutely find that at the door. I mean, the way I see it and what I've been experiencing at the doors is that most suburban voters just kind of want to have a government they can be confident in and that stays off their back other than that. You know, they want to know that government is out there doing good things for people in need, but otherwise they're not going to have to deal with it. There's not going to be a lot of scandals. It's just something that can happen in the background while they go about their daily lives. And, I have a lot of luck pointing out how at the state level, we haven't had that lately under this governor's administration. And we really need to bring a lot more oversight back at the state level too, that we haven't had with a lot of, all of these scandals going on in the Dayton administration, really. We've got nursing homes where people are complaining about elder abuse and they sat on the back burner instead of being answered. There were stories of government cars being purchased for above the prices that were allowed by law. I mean, I could go down the list over and over, but I think people are just craving for some oversight. And when I tell people I'm ready to go down there and conduct some hearings and offer that oversight, because I've got a little bit of background in the law and know what I'm doing as far as questioning someone, that's something that resonates with them. They want good government in the suburbs, and I'm ready to deliver it.
Yeah, that transparency component seems to be, even if you're Democrat, Republican, if you're just an average voter, it seems to be something that we're all yearning for, quite frankly. You just made mention off camera about your team and the people you have in place right now, and it seems like you are garnering support and garnering volunteers and doing what it takes to have an infrastructure in place. What I'm curious about, Jim, is understanding that you've built out a team and you have started early and you're working your tail off. Do you foresee anything that could be a hiccup in this campaign? Do you foresee any roadblock or any reason why you wouldn't win in just a slightly blue district at this point?
Well, I mean, I think that's the main roadblock is, it's not the absolute most Republican-friendly district out there. We hold all of those already. But if you were looking for pickup opportunities, this would have to be near the top of the list. And so it's not a perfect district to be running in, but it's one that we can win in. And I'm fighting, just an ever so inclined slope uphill battle.
Yes.
And, I don't see anything huge coming down the pipeline, but then again, how do you predict the unpredictable?
Well, that's true. And I think to that end, we just had primaries yesterday. You didn't have a primary. However, I'm wondering if you took any lessons away from, as you saw some of the returns come through, as you saw big numbers on both the Republican and DFL side in those primaries. Did you take anything from those numbers or from what happened last night?
Yeah, I think in the governor's race in particular, I think people were looking for someone who was genuine and that, they didn't necessarily always agree with, but that they trusted would do what was in their heart. And I think poll-tested candidates on the Republican side have not been doing so well recently, and I think that's probably one of the reasons that we saw that result last night.
Very good. Jim, how can people get in touch with you, learn a little bit more about your campaign, and ultimately help out?
Yeah, my website is jimkiner.com. Nice and easy, JIMKINER.com.
That's an easy one. And what sort of things are you looking for help with at this point in time?
I'm always ready to have another volunteer at the door. I love to have people who are ready to get engaged in any way possible. If you're in the district and want to put up a yard sign, I'm perfectly capable of getting that to you. Reach out, and I'd love to have a conversation.
Very good. Jim Kiner, 51A, Burnsville and Eagan. Thank you so much, sir, for joining the Republican Roundtable.
Thank you.
This has been the Republican Roundtable. I'm Max Reimer. Until next time.